Hello there. Man in work truck here, which makes me the utmost authority on what I'm about to make a video on. I'm basically getting snow rained out at work here. The paint won't stick to the concrete I need to paint, so I just needed to get the thoughts out of my head and onto the internet. Because one of the great things about my job is I'm alone in my truck kind of all day long, meandering about the outdoors. One of the worst things about my job is I'm alone with my thoughts all day long. And I've been thinking about here this notion of when you say something in a nerdly vice, as I often refer to them, Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop RPGs, Warhammer, video games, comic books, that notion of, hey, let's keep politics out of this. You've all said it. We've said it myself. I use video games to tap out from how boring I find reality, but that is a privilege I possess as someone who isn't constantly confronted with the politics of his existence, for the most part. We all have our thing, right? It's weird because that is itself a political statement. It denotes the luxury with which one can say something like, hey, keep politics out of video games, keep politics out of Warhammer, this is my safe space from all of that. That is a political statement. You are saying, don't do this thing. Politics is a nebulous term that you throw out there to just basically mean something I don't feel comfortable thinking about right now. Now, doing that sparingly, totally fine. We all need a reprieve, especially now, for our mental health. The problem is using it as a blinder to the world constantly can be a problem. And the main problem I see with this is sort of a ratchet effect. I'm not naming any names, blaming anyone. What had me thinking about this, nothing against that as a person, but just making a joke. A light joke, which was indeed a joke. I know them, and I know the context of the joke. They made the joke. I go, fun joke, okay? Worth a little bit of a laugh in that self-deprecating manner. It was fine. But then I pushed back at that, because the joke made was one sort of framed in, I wouldn't say outright racism, but a bias. It showed a bias, and awareness to a bias. Ha ha ha, I had an awareness of this bias, right? That's not too bad. That's pretty benign. And then I kind of ha ha ha, laughs out, LOL out the way, emoji reaction, thumbs up type thing. Done, I pushed back against it and I said, it could be perceived as a microaggression. A microaggression is sort of these inherent biases. I probably don't need to give you all a sociological lesson on this, but a microaggression in short is just a bias. We all have biases. We've been raised in, for the most part, a cis white male dominated patriarchy capitalist society. We don't escape that without some socialized bias. Just a microaggression might just be something like calling someone getting put in jail, getting locked up in the paddy wagon, right? I'm Irish American. My grandparents came over here from Ireland, both sides of my family. Half my aunts and uncles have an Irish accent still, and my grandma is almost imperceptible with her Bostonian Irish accent, formerly Irish, and then she absorbed that Boston. So it's really funny, actually. She's a great lady. That is, that could be a microaggression, right? Something benign, just based on initial bias that we've kind of lost the origin of, that's just culturally part of the euphemism and things of the time. Now, you have the benefit of the doubt when you use a microaggression like this. Something, again, benign. You don't know that it's steeped in, ha ha ha, Irish for criminals, right? So you may not know that. You may not know it's kind of a slur. You kind of, that first time you get the pass. You go, okay, you didn't know that. Cool. But, I point out the quip, hey, yeah, maybe it could be perceived as biased or racist on the internet if you were to share this joke outside of the context of a couple people just having a conversation, a self-aware conversation about things. What's going to happen is you have a decision to make. You can either maintain what could be perceived as a microaggression going forward, or you can address it. Now, I leave that up to individuals. How much do you want to confront yourself and change yourself and so on and so forth? That's a scary topic. I'm not judging you. You have to engage with that on your own. I seek curiosity and to always be better than I was yesterday. I mostly fail. I don't feel like I'm better today than I was yesterday. I feel about the same. But, whatever. What struck me as curious over the course of this interaction was getting shushed for bringing up microaggressions. Saying that edgy joke, and it wasn't even, again, I need to point out that this was not PewDiePie levels of edgy. This was just a benign, barely even a microaggression. This was could be perceived as a microaggression. That was, edgy humor. Leaning on racist tropes or potential racial biases. Which shifts the conversation, politically speaking, right. Okay? Othering people and, that sort of stuff tends to be shifting towards that right spectrum of discourse, of discussion. Pushing back against it was what got me shushed. Not pushing back against it and saying, hey, don't make that joke. Just saying, hey, yeah, it could be. So what I've been observing happening, especially in nerdly vices, all of our things, is we can make the edgy joke. We can push right in the acceptable discourse. It's not racist or phobic or any of the ists. It's just a joke. Until it's not. It's just a joke. Don't be such a prude. Don't be such a snowflake, right? And, honestly, make your jokes. Whatever. I don't care. I mean, I care, but, honestly, free speech, make your jokes. What bothers me is this sort of ratchet effect. In acceptable social discourse, in our nerd spheres, it seems to be okay to make all those jokes just jokes, bro. What's not okay is saying something sort of antithetical or adding to a discussion that you think the joke opens up a window for. You say the thing, oh, let's not get political, comes out. And so that Overton window of acceptable social discourse sort of shifts further and further right. Anytime you go to push back against it, the clamp comes down on that backside of it. Hey, don't be political. And these things that are inherently political statements, like making a racist joke, continues to become more and more socially acceptable and push further and further right in normal contexts. And that's the part where, this isn't, death to Smoochie, where, hey, the rhino's a racist, ha ha ha, it's a joke on a movie. This is in social media context where we talk about those things, where we talk about movies, we talk about games, we talk about comic books. That's politically acceptable to be edgy and push the humor this direction into othering territory and making the joke at an expense and punching down in our comedy. That is socially acceptable. What is not socially acceptable, being political and pushing back against it. Got to clamp down that ratchet on the other side of the Overton window. So we just keep shifting further and further into this weird place where the things that are most acceptable to talk about in nerdly safe spaces, and I'm going to use the term safe space deliberately, I retreat to my comic books to not have to deal with the pressures of my everyday life. I'm going to go home pressured with how much work I don't get done today because I can't paint wet concrete, and how much I'm going to have to try to make up for it tomorrow. And I'm going to paint a model, or put together a model, or play a video game. I get it. But the social interactions around all that stuff where people say, hey, keep the politics out of it, this is my safe space. Whilst I understand and sympathetic to it, you got to understand that the greater machinations of what's going on in our world is we are shifting, basically, don't want politics into it. It goes beyond, I don't want your politics in it, right? Like the old adage is people just say, hey, I don't want your politics in my thing. I'm okay with my politics. It goes beyond that to not being aware that we're shifting acceptable discourse in a certain direction and not letting it shift back to that balanced, open, compassionate, two ways. You're allowed your free speech to talk about what you want. I'm not allowed to say anything back because I can't be political. But, hey, I'm often wrong. I live my life with a healthy dose of Cartesian doubt. Just want y'all maybe to think about some stuff for a minute. Take care, everyone. I'm going to go paint wet cement.